everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We are bringing you the show from the Southern Utah University's annual Rural Summit, which has provided a lot of great guests for us over the last 6 years. Today joining us is Ben Winchester, who is a rural sociologist. Now, this is a title I had never heard of before, Ben. And you are the Senior Research Fellow at the University of Minnesota's Extension Center for Community Vitality.
That's right.
So you get everybody doing calisthenics in small towns? Is that how that works?
Our communities are quite vital.
Okay. So explain to me exactly what a rural sociologist does. I mean, from looking at what I've been able to read, you're kind of a numbers guy.
Yeah, I am. And that's not always true of sociologists, I would say. I'm a quantitative rural sociologist, and I use a lot of sociological theory to help understand some of the changes that have occurred across our specifically rural communities that we've seen in terms of how people are connected, what they do for employment, and how those structures impact everyday community and social life that we've got across our rural landscape. And I've been lucky and fortunate enough to get an education in a program specific to rural sociology, and that was at the University of Missouri. And following that, I went to work at the University of Minnesota at a new outreach unit called the Center for Small Towns. And I was there for a number of years, tromping around rural Minnesota, learning about what's going on and how people are talking about our towns and what we can do to help them progress into the future. And then probably 8 years ago or so, I moved over to Extension, which I think a lot of people know who Extension is the 4-H people and the ag people, but specifically in Minnesota, we've got a new sliver of Extension called Community Vitality, the Center for Community Vitality. And it's within that we do economic development, community development, and leadership and civic engagement programming.
Explain to me the rural nature of Minnesota. I mean, we all know about, Minneapolis. For us in the West, that's about as far as we go with Minnesota. How much of it you consider urban as a ratio and rural?
4 to 1 metro. So in terms of population, if you look at land area, it's another story. Land area might be about 35% urban and 65% rural. So but even within Minnesota, we've got the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area, which is now quite large, and even encompasses areas of St. Cloud across an interstate corridor, and then down to Rochester, which is the home of Mayo Clinic. So we do have, I would say, a number of metropolitan areas across the state as well.
So looking at it number-wise, you're actually almost identical to Utah because we have basically a huge metro center, Salt Lake, Ogden, Provo, and the very southwest corner of the state with St. George has kind of blossomed into a metropolitan
No,
area.
that's right. When I first started running the numbers, I looked at there were a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. For example, you had got the third highest growth rate in the country between 2000 and 2010. You witnessed some extraordinary population growth across the state as a whole, and at the same time, like Minnesota, we've got high amenity areas just like you do here. Minnesota, we almost have 3 Minnesotas. We've got the southeastern part of the state, which is rolling hills and bluffs. We've got the western part of the state, which adheres more to the prairie territory, and then the northern part of the state, which is more pines territory and mining operations up there.
Wow. Well, I think there's a good start. Over your career in Minnesota and where you started, what's been the biggest single surprise to you as you've done this data and research? What was the biggest myth buster that you think your career-wise has encountered?
Well, I think everything I do is myth busting right now. It's not everybody locks their doors. Not everybody knows everybody in town. There is just so many. Not everybody is flocking to the city. There are just so many things that you hear about in the narrative about what's going on in our rural communities. I found the data just didn't support it anymore. And I think the premise of my whole argument that I gave here today even is that the narrative we're using to describe our rural communities is straight out of 1950, and we really haven't done a good job understanding some of the trends that have been happening since then.
So our narrative has been in rerun syndication for like 50 years.
That's right. You can literally copy and paste, if our grocery store closes, our small town is going to die. If our hardware store closes, our small town is going to die. If our school closes, our small town is going to die. So we've had a lot of issues in our past.
Excellent. Well, this is a great place for us to launch from. We're going to take a break here on the County. Right back with Ben Winchester.